Yeah, welcome everyone. Welcome to Four Sacred Gifts podcast. I'm Dr. Anita Sanchez. I'm Nawa, Aztec, and Toltec, and I'm delighted. I'm coming to you from beautiful Rocky Mountains in Colorado. And it's blue sky. It's just our plant relatives. The trees are standing strong, and it's just a wonderful day to be alive. And I am especially happy for today because, the Four Sacred Gifts podcast whole purpose, our mission is to amplify the voices of our elders, of leaders, Indigenous people who have wisdom and knowledge to share with us. And too often, those voices are muted. So today I have a wonderful guest, friend, elder, Iya Tahirah. And she is just amazing. And I realize your last name, Abubakr. I never said your last name. Okay.
Yes.
That's great. And so let me just tell you a little bit about her and we'll get going. So Iya is a Black American and Yoruba ancestry. She was born in River Lee Adams in Pocahontas, Mississippi. Iya was initiated by Ifa priestess Yamaya in the ancestral traditions of the Yoruba people of Western Africa and studied and trained with Malidoma Some in shamanism. She is a medicine woman, diviner, shamanic practitioner. She provides initiatory guidance and trainings for those who seek greater wisdom in the mystery. She is founder and co-founder for the St. Croix Council of Elders. Iya's life purpose and dedication are to the service of humanity as a whole and to leave the earth in a greater place where she found it. And I have had the privilege of being on the Elder Council for a number of years and to finally met Iya in person last August. And so with the warmest heart, it's just expanding. I welcome you, Iya. So happy you're here.
Thank you so much. That's a wonderful introduction. I love it. Coming from you, it feels warm and fuzzy.
Good.
So, yeah, thank you so much. Yes.
Yes. So
I'm so grateful to be here. Yes. Thank you.
Good. I'm so glad. And I was telling you before that, there isn't a method to what people want to say. It's just what you want to share. But we did talk a little bit about, perhaps you can share some, first of all, a little bit about your childhood. I would love that. And then we'll get into what is this about the confusion about people of African ancestry and being Indigenous and all of that. But if you could just tell us a little bit about your childhood and where you grew up and anything that stands out for you at this moment.
I love to tell about childhood. And at one time when I first started this journey and I ventured out from Mississippi and left that place and went into a larger urban setting, I sort of was ashamed of where I came from. I felt small in the world. But what I realized that there was a richness as I grew, there's a richness to the fact that I grew up as a daughter of a sharecropper. And I realized that underneath it was a deep love and a deep protection. And had I not had that, I would not be the person that I am today. Because beyond the suffering was the indigenous way that we live in life. And that's why I like to bring us as African people back to understand individuality and understand that closeness to land and living, no matter where we're going through, when we have that connection to land, to nature, that is your friend, that is your mother, that's what carries you. And that's what carried me in Mississippi and as a child. Because there were the elders still reminisce of what it was to serve in the world, I believe, as elders. Because there were the great-grandmothers and the grandmothers who really cared for you. And they was the ones that parented you. One of the funniest stories I pause and tell is all of us call my mom and my dad by their first name. And so the older ones used to ask my mom and dad when they go to church and say, do you have a problem with your children calling you by your first name? They said, no. They hear everybody else call us by that name. They just imitating what they hear. But the one thing that we love, that they respect us. So as long as they honor us and respect us, we don't have a problem with them calling us by our first name. And so I grew up with that and put that inside of me and realized that those who parented us were the great-grandmothers and the grandmothers. Those were the stories that carried us. Not only did they carry us as children, they carried the whole village. And we may say sharecropping was bad. When you look underneath that, there was some eminence of what we call village life, because there was a protected measure here, someone to nurture that soul as it grew through that time period. I learned those things as I weave back in and look back into that childhood and realize the richness of childhood. It really prepares you to be who you are in the world. If you really look there, it's the foundation that carries you. And I'm so happy you asked that question, because that's what I found is missing in our culture today.
Tell us more. That's just keep going.
It's like, so as a child, I was allowed to be free. I was allowed to explore. I was allowed to dream and have imagination. And when I contrast that with today, I found that children are not allowed, not encouraged to have the imagination, allowed to explore that outside world and to have their own mind, their own way. My great-grandmother was really good. She would say, we had a classroom when we arrived home from school. You had a second classroom. And it wasn't about what you learned in school. It was, what did you learn as you walked to and fro from school? What lessons did you learn? What did you see? And one of the greatest experiences I had in my childhood later, I was 8 years of age, and that was my first encounter with Native Americans. I didn't know, nobody didn't explain. I didn't know what Native American was. They was just, and I didn't realize that they was also being they was being displaced. So beyond my house, about, say, a half a mile, was a teepee, and the family lived there in their compound. And every morning when I would walk back for school, the grandfather would say, good morning. And if I paused too long, he'd say, go on, go on, go on. Tell me, go on. So one day I come back and they're no longer there. They was no longer there. I came home and my house sat on a little knoll, and so I just cried. I fell down on my knees crying. And what happened, this bear on the other side standing up with like this. And it too was coming down. Now I would know that this experience would impact my life, I think most of my life. But I wouldn't know to what degree until I met another medicine woman from the Dene culture. I was at a conference and I told her the story. And she said, oh, you carry bear medicine. I said, the bear knew that you would be here to witness that. And so we as the elders are here to witness this journey across this earth, and not only to witness it, but to be able to interpret those experiences as having significance in this time period. What am I saying? Contrasting that with yesterday in this environmental festival and talking to all of these young children, 300 some school children came through, and I did water. I did the magic water. And I wanted to use Dr. Moto's experiential approach to water and get children connected to water in a different way. And I felt, since it's environmental and all of these great scientists here You're talking scientific, but what about our connection to water? What about allowing our children to be connected to water? We will have a generation of children growing up in America who think that water comes from a bottle. You understand?
Yes, definitely.
And this is what I have encountered. And so my childhood growing up in Mississippi allows me a contrast, allows me a weaving. Because so often we shame base the way we grew up in the world, or we shame base even our suffering has medicine in it. And if we could look at suffering, take a different view on suffering, and understand that underneath there is medicine, and ask that great question, what is it what are the lessons? What is the wisdom that comes out of that time frame, out of that living, out of that experience? And that's what I found so missing on our earth, is that we, especially among my Black community, is that we so embody the residue or the trauma, as opposed to looking at what's underneath there and what are the lessons that we learn out of that suffering and being able to interpret that world. And that's where I think the elders come in. The elders are the ones who can interpret the experience and allow us to go forward. Because if we cannot interpret an experience, we stay stuck in the trauma of it. We stay stuck in the pain of it. And to me, as a elder on this planet, that is our role, is to be able to interpret life so we can raise that vibration. Because we use these words, but what does it mean? What does the language mean? How does the language resonate that it moves us forward in this life?
Oh, you speak so to my heart when you're talking, because what you're having me reflect on, and I'm hoping the viewers, your gifts and what you're sharing about yourself, open up them to what they've been through, so that they can take in your wisdom. And I know growing up, I wasn't confused, because I listened to my elders, my grandmother especially, who would do ceremony, and she spoke a language that wasn't Spanish or English, and that was, her Aztecan or Nahuatl language. And but I didn't realize what was going on the whole time until much later. And so when you talk about what do you gain from that period, and let me just say, for me, one of the things I gained was, I always heard the story of my grandfather coming from Mexico and going across the West, stopped in Missouri. All the other places, he'd send my grandmother a little note saying, "You can't come here, they hate us here. You can't come here, they hate us here." Missouri, this is in 1900, he writes my grandmother, he says, "They don't like us here either, but they hate the Black people more than us. We have a chance." And then I always thought that was, and I grew up in a Black neighborhood, so I thought it was confusing to me. One part, I felt like, well, you're to be proud, whatever color. And yet at the same time, part of my family was hiding the Indigenous part. The other part was, in ceremony, like my grandpa, we're doing all the different things, staying connected to the water, to the earth, to all the elements and our relatives. But that the learning there is so important. So please go on with whatever you want to share about how you bring this forward in your own life, and how you're already telling us how you do, but anything else, in sharing any knowledge or wisdom that you've gathered.
We was talking about I don't know, we talking about the roller elders are talking about, I speak to us today. And that's what I found today, is that sometimes I think we step into this, where we are today, this emerging energy and evolution with urgency, as opposed to embodying it in a way that asks that greater question. What is it that we need today to understand and that will move us forward? What is it that we need to let go of and re-examine and come into it from a way of understanding and ingesting it in a way that it becomes medicine for the world. That's the best word that comes to me. How can it become the medicine for us today?
Yes.
And one of the other things that my great grandmother said, truth will set you free. And I used to say, she said, baby, don't worry about what they say. Truth will set you free. I'm like, okay, what is truth? And I thought that my great grandmother might be talking about truth in the Bible because as children growing up, Black families was Baptist. And so we all went to church. Sunday was a great day because I feel that Baptists had more of what we learning to be indigenous, or we calling indigenous, because one great teacher said that the African Black people had a way of transcending Christianity in a way that had never been seen. And I thought that when I read that later on in life, I said, and I weaved it around. Yes, when I go back and I see the way that the originality of African people, that we were very spiritual and we connected to that deep-rooted earth medicine. And that's what got demonized here on this side. And it is just now becoming recognized as the name voodoo, hoodoo. All of this is coming back to the surface. And this is what Black women was punished for, in particularly being practice voodoo or hoodoo. And we didn't know what that was. My great-grandmother some of the people in the community would say, well, she's an old witch and she practiced voodoo. Well, wait, children, we don't know what it says. And great-grandmother would say, oh, don't worry about them, baby. And she had this way of saying, a heap seeds and a few knows. Grandmother, what does a heap seed and a few knows mean? Well, just that. So as I grew up, a heap seeds and a few knows mean all of us can be looking at something, but only a few individuals will know that truth. So I feel that paying attention to what my great-grandmother said allows me to see what's true for today. It allows me to know what that truth looks like inside of me. And I think each one of us have a way of interpreting what we call truth. Truth don't lie. No matter what culture it comes from, it just doesn't lie. It's like, how do we, and this is my new word that I'm asking, how do we connect these ley lines of truth in the world? And what I like about it is, in our modern way, is looking at how the elemental world helps us to connect those ley lines. How all our indigenous worlds, when we began to remember our indigeneity as individual and collective beings on this earth, we are now collecting those ley lines. And we are able to tell a collected story. That's important. So it was necessary when we look at what colonialism has done, in order for it to survive, it was necessary for it to separate and tear everything apart. So now is our time to, how do we weave? And this is what I want. How do we weave it back in without feeling such urgency, a need to rush? It's a weaving. We are children coming back home. If we could just look at it, that we are now the children, adolescent children maybe, coming home. We're in our first stage of initiation of coming home, maybe.
Yes,
Can we be humble enough to weave that back in without discounting all of those who stand in these directions? All of us bring our own ancestral lineage, but how do we interpret that so it doesn't continue to separate us on this earth? And you brought a wonderful point about Black people. Like, Black people was used as that point of separation. I even have African friends that came in during my years in the university. I was I studied Indiana Purdue University, and I met many African communities, students from different parts of Africa. And the one thing that they told me when they came to immigration, they was told not to associate with Black people and Puerto Ricans. They was told this. So this is the condition of separation. And white people, I think that white people that have a problem with that because I don't know any way to do it. But we have to look underneath how if they were not able to separate us, they wouldn't have been able to control as long as they have. So now is this opportunity to weave a new dispensation, a new hoop together in this new paradigm. Because I think that if we could look at the new paradigm and say, where are we? It's like a clear slate. So how do we weave this? We have this clear slate. So what now do we want to weave together? And how do we want it to speak to our collective existence on this planet? And to be in agreement, that we make today. And it's so, how do we agree to be this weaving elder? Because we are the elders of today. And it's on us to look at how we weave that hook together and weave it in a way that it stands for this new generation. We are the living ancestral voices today. I like to say that because to me, we are the awake ones. We are awake ones. And maybe somebody will write that, but we are the awake ones, carrying our ancestors' bloods and their wishes and their battle. Because their struggle was for this freedom. They may not have been able to put it into words, but this was a whole aspect of whether we look at Harriet Tubman, whether we look at all the great leaders, this was the whole goal, was to free ourselves so we could be a greater expression of creation.
Yes.
We all are here, we here as co-creators on this earth. How can we be the greatest expression of creation itself? That's my question.
Yeah, it is a good question. Because we have to, it's sort of like goes back to the truth you talked about. The truth is the truth. And so when you clear and you go back to ancestors and then move forward and get that clarity, then it is a freedom. It's what I experienced as from my grandmother and my mom, who used to say, because I used to stomp around as a little chubby girl, and they'd say, "Walk softer, Iya, walk softer," like you're kissing your first mother. So I was always getting those messages, but then I still got mad when I'd go to school and I'd come back and go, "Mom, they told me today that George Washington, the president in my country." Well, that's not true. Or, "Mom," I just would come up with all these different things, even for the church. "Mom, they say babies don't get to go to heaven, they go to purgatory." What? And she would always say, "Oh, a version of yours about the truth. Put your energy where you want to put it. But in the end, you can always come home and speak the truth." And the home was much bigger than what I was thinking of, the house with the 4 rooms and 8 of us in them. And, all of that. It's home, which is part of this amazing creation. And so it's beautiful. Anyway, I know you're turning on lights for other people too. Can you, I don't want to take you off of what you're saying, but I also want you to, so is this coming home and this finding, and you said you went to Purdue, but then I also know that you went and studied with the Yoruba, you studied, and what does that mean? Because I know a lot of people will say you need to go back home. And I go back to Mexico, or you need to go to Africa. And however, again, home doesn't mean necessarily you have to literally, although there's some beauty that comes from that. So I'd like you to tell us a little what you can. I don't want to share anything you're not supposed to, but what that meant for you, what that did for you as in terms of now an elder, having the kind of surrounding and training that you had with the Yoruba people and Maladome, who a lot of people know of him and his work.
I tell you what I want to do with that coming home, going home. I did go to Africa. I've been to Africa. I've been to Africa, Ghana, and been to, everybody wants to go to Egypt, but I went to Egypt, and that was really coming home to the soul. Okay? To me, that's coming home to the soul. But what coming home has meant for me, and this is the other thing that I see the confusion around, and I don't knock it. I love that today that African countries are really opening up, because I think this is what will need to happen on this earth, that what we see going on right now, and we will see if we live in long enough, we can see today, don't have to be living, that is a part of that evolutionary transformation that's going on. And that even though we see politically these boundaries being set, but in the end, things will move in a way where we become that whole homecoming community in our soul energy, not necessarily our physical. Because people always say to me, what did it mean? You went to Africa? Did you want to stay there? Well, the chief at the time, I was there in 2003, the king even gave all of us opportunity to come, and we had parts of land we could go in more and use if we wanted to. But I didn't feel it here. I felt like I had to come back to this place to do my work. It wasn't there. So coming home to me is different than, it's not a physical coming home. It's coming home to remember what it is. The original agreement that we made, that's what coming home to me. You asked me about Maladoma. The initiation that I had with Yoruba in Ifa, which I'm 30 years as an initiated priestess in Ifa. I am 28 years initiated under Maladoma Somei this year. So all of these are meant to me a way of coming to remember what it is to be home inside ourselves. How do I come home to myself? And what I ask each person when I do initiatory offerings is, the first thing, ask the question, why am I here? Why did I choose to come? Because we think that our soul just automatically, some miraculous, it just showed up. But according to my guidance and teaching from my ancestral line, is that we choose to be these conduits. We choose to come on earth to do this work. That our soul comes to grow itself, to evolve itself. So if I understand that it's other than my physicality, then I begin to remember my purpose for being. Why did I choose to be on earth today? And why I chose to be on earth today, it says to me, to create this new ley line. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. You understand? I wouldn't even have the wisdom or the knowledge to interpret it in a different way. So it allows me to step outside of my judgments and criminalization of people around me, but to own that awareness and that consciousness that I've been gifted to know. And to step out, sometimes you're stepping out alone, but you're coming home to that soul remembrance, that coming home to that self, coming home to that green land, coming home to that water place within the self. That's what coming home to me. So when I come home to that, I can water creation around me. I can water this outside world in a different way. How? Through my teaching, through my work. People say work. I don't have another word for it. But through the work that I do what I did even yesterday was watering the plants. Those children are plants. Can we water that spirit where it can grow? Not putting stuff in it. That's the other thing that I learned. The greatest teaching method for me is a question. Ask the question as opposed to putting something in. And Woodson said it best. Woodson was one of the early historical writers in the American history. And what he wrote, he said that the miseducation of children was putting stuff into children as opposed to drawing stuff out, inviting stuff to come forward. So my thing is to ask the question. Yesterday was really funny. You would have loved it. So the whole thing was, is water alive? No. Is your water not alive? Can water talk? No. So it was really funny. I said, okay, well, how much water did you know that how much water is in your body? Then they paused. Oh, some said 80, and some said 70. Okay, is it alive? And they looked like, I said, are you alive? Yes. I said, now is water alive? Oh, so now you're making me, I'm connected to the water. If I get up here and just throw information at these children, okay, the teacher said blah, blah, blah. But if I connect to the water in myself, guess what? I'm connected to water. I now have a different relationship with water. I came home to water. Coming home. Inside. So can we come home to ourselves, to our inner being, to answer that question, why did I choose to be here? And what is my greatest offering? And that's what initiation allowed me to do, to understand that I had a gift, that I brought a gift, a specific gift to bring to the world. Now, how do I offer that gift?
That's the question for each and every one of us, for sure. And I love when you're talking, what it spurs in me, hanging on every word, is, as an Indigenous person, well, I grew up with being told everything is sacred. Everything is sacred. A rock, the water, the earth, your brother, everybody's sacred. They don't always operate in sacred way, the two-leggeds, but everything is sacred. And when I hear you talk, I don't think I've told you this. What came through me is you are a sacred activist. That is that's what all elders in some level should be doing. But that is so clearly when you speak, Iya, with your heart, with your soul, with your whole being, that energy goes out. And so now it's going to be, every time I look at you, I want you to know, I'm just going to think, oh, right, sacred activist. And I won't leave you in like that. That's a big box, so I don't think it even has any.
That is a big box. But it's not right. Because I've been trying to put it on. I'm like, what is it? Because I don't know that, because people say things about you. It's humbling, really. That's all I can say. Very humbling. Yeah, to be a big box is humbling.
I think better, because I don't want to leave it to box. What it is, sacred activism in my mind. Black Elk is one of the revered Indigenous leaders here, at least in North America, but other places around the world know of him. And he said, I won't quite totally quote him correctly, but it was basically, the circle. Our houses are in circle. There's a circle of family. There's a circle of relations. So it's a hoop of life. And what he said, the circle sacred. The circle, at every point in the circle is the center. And the perimeter, nowhere. You see what I mean? So there is no box. Everything. And you're
Right.
into that with the questions you ask, which sound simple, but are not simple questions. They leave you being curious and learning and listening to the voices of your ancestors, the voices around you today, all of it inside that's happening. So thank you. Those children are so, so fortunate to have you there. for you to teach them in such a grounded way. That's just it. Is you like your head is up here, like in the sky, but your feet are so on the ground. You don't have to be. You know what I mean? It's great. That's some energy that you bring. Oh gosh. Well, so where would you like to go from here? I can ask you some questions, but I really love when you just get quiet and this is what I want to talk about.
I don't know where, it's like I say that when I see what's happening in the world today, it caused me great grief in ways I didn't realize it caused me great grief until I just said it. It really does cause me great grief. And I guess sitting with that grief and how to allow the grief. And I feel that at some point, what I would love to see is a great ceremony for grief. If I could see all of us just like that grief ceremony, and now that I'm bringing it forth, I probably can see it happening with the Indigenous elders right now, is that we begin to sit in that sacred hoop and hold this grief circle and grieve together that way of coming into this new dispensation. Because we really are. And this is what Maladoma left with us when, Maladoma made his transition in 2022, and he was trying to make connection with all his students. I just love it. That kind of knowingness of gifts and knowingness of what you bring to the earth, and that's what he brings, is that remembrance to awaken us to remember that we can utilize our experiences to create a different earth. That awakening. And I think it's time that we begin to hold a different vision and look at how we can hold it together and not lopsided. Be careful that we went on lopsided. And my thing is to bring as much as I can, even to my African brothers and sisters from across the way, that there's a period of awakening. We cannot step back into those boxes of holding sacred nation, that thing that wopsides us. My nation, how do we create a different earth response? I think that there's some points that we have to equalize the power, yes. Like what I'm seeing going on in Burkina Faso. I love the fact that I'm watching this young brother. And I can't help but believe that the elders there, because they have a wonderful, intact elder community that continues to do the sacred work of initiating those young people from the birth. These children are initiated. And Ibrahim probably was named at birth. Even before he got here, the elders would know who, because they do a birth ceremony and say, who's coming? And then they look at holding that gift of who's coming until his first initiation, and then he's told what his gift is. And this is one of the things I think that we could do differently in this side of the world, is begin to acknowledge the gifts in our children, as opposed to everybody needing to go and get a higher education. But what? If we're going to be money driven, are we going to be what? Creative givers are driven? Co-creative driven?
Yeah.
Because if we all money, it's like, I look at children, go to college, get a good job, go to college, get a good education, get a good job. What is that? It's so tiring. And our children today, I don't know about where you are, but the children, young people today are resistant to this. So how do we, the elders, inform and hold this different vision for them and be able to support them as they go through this rough time? Because what I'm hearing that we have more suicide, we have more depression, more medicated children. So how do we reduce that necessity of relying on narcotics, medicine to keep us not, because it's more than just depression. I see some children around me committing suicide. So how do we, the elders of today, begin to hold that different vision for this new generation? Because it is, and get out. And sometimes I see that we get in the way as elders, as opposed to understanding that as elders, we are here to inform and yes, to raise that different vibration and to, again, to be able to interpret life so our children can step out of that trauma. It's not just enough to sit down, but we have to move that trauma from this earth because it is trauma. It's emotional and it's physical and it's spiritual. It's all of those. So we are, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but
No,
that's
you
what
are.
I'm feeling that we are. That it's time for us to look at how we sit in that hoop to bring forth this new dispensation on this earth and not stay stuck in the past ourselves. Even interpreting indigenous ways, can we interpret them from, say, the aspect of living life principle ways to live on earth as opposed to being fixed, that they too are transitional. You understand what I'm saying? It's
I think
transitional.
if I hear you right, it's because I see this getting stuck, and that's what I love about our elder councils that include people from all over, is that it becomes, it's sort of sad to say, becomes almost like nation superiority. It's like, well, yes, I know you're indigenous, but you know, I'm this tribe or this nation, or I had this and you didn't have that. And all of that is like, but when you come with that worldview, with the knowing inside of you about home, that we're connected to everything, then it makes no sense saying stuff like that. You know, not even, I'm going to say something that, and you can correct me, but I'm telling you some stories I'm making up about you. So one of the stories I make up about you is, see, in sacred activism, a sacred activist to me is someone who is so awake, and you're always awakening. It's not like you arrive. It keeps expanding out. That you can even comfort what people so call your enemy. And I believe that you do that. Because part of even
I didn't get it. I'm sorry.
that a sacred activist can actually even be open to comforting their enemy, because there really is no enemy. It's not to say there isn't horrific things that happen that we have to go cry, we have to do whatever we need to do, but we come back to the home, and then there collectively we move forward, but not out of the same crud, the same hatred, the same separation. And so all of a sudden it was the vision of, and I can't tell you who that looked like, but that you were comforting some being that had caused so much cruelty. And that's an awakened person. And that's, as Indigenous people, we can't participate in that separating. Elders don't. They just don't. It's not true. It's not true.
Well, I think that I learned that from the women that I watched in the world. And as a child, I grew up like looking in. I was trying to tell somebody, just my sister, and she hung the phone up on me the other day, because I was just completed 86 years on the planet. So I'm trying to tell her what that felt like, because for me, it represents the third Saturn, that third Saturn in life. And it's a Saturn that allows you to walk between the two polarities of life and death. How do we walk these paths? And how do we reconcile as we walk the path of we call life and death, and look at the world differently? And I told her, I said, I always felt that I was outside looking in. I never felt in the family. I felt like I was outside looking at the family. And I said, today I feel like I'm looking outside, looking at the world. And I said, I think I've been all that way. And I said, nobody in the family could see me. And that's when I guess it did something, because she said she don't want to talk about it. And that kind of, it didn't affect me in the way it done in my early days. I just said, okay, well, can't talk about it. But the whole thing is to be able to embody. I was talking about Black women. When I look back and look at Black women who could nurture a baby, even though they couldn't go to a white person's toilet. I saw these things in my home where Black women could be in a house, they could breastfeed a white baby, they could make your food, but they can't go to your toilet. That to me was senseless. That was one of my first experiences. I told my mom, I said, why would you work in a place? I was 13 years old, and you have to go in the back door. You know what she said to me? You need to stay at home. You asked the wrong questions.
Whoa.
I know what she meant. And also but they was able to do what I know this to me modeled something. And my initial response was a reactionary, as a young person, a civil rights era. Even there, I questioned the deeper aspects of that. But I was able to see through it. Because if you can understand those women, and I remember one statement was saying, but that child, my dear, is innocent. It didn't come in to do no harm. I can remember this.
That's great.
This is what shapes you. That child didn't come in to do no harm.
Right.
Innocent. That child may be my liberator. It didn't come in to do no harm. That's what I saw women, Black women. Some people may interpret that as a negative, but I saw it as this deep well of humility, this ability to give beyond. And maybe those are lessons that we can, and the other part of that, Anita, maybe those are lessons that the soul needs to learn in order to elevate itself. Can the soul, if we step outside of this spacesuit that we wear and understand that we wearing a spacesuit, a bodysuit that houses much more than we giving credit to. It holds the soul. What is the soul? The soul comes in to learn itself. That's one thing my great-grandmother said. It is the soul that comes home to learn. It is the soul that comes to earth to learn its lessons. Like a child, when you come onto the earth, you come as a babe. You crawl, you get up, you fall down, you get up, you fall down. But you don't want nobody to pick you up. If you go back and visit that little girl, you didn't want nobody, you want to show off. Oh, look, I can walk.
Exactly.
All through life, we do that. All through life, if we working to discuss, look at our life. When we accomplish something, we get happy. To me, that's the soul's expression. How do we learn to be in good relationship with another if we're not willing to sit with another?
Yeah. So we certainly need
How
that.
do I learn to be in relationship with myself if I'm not willing to sit with my discomfort self, the one that's not comfortable with itself? See, these are lessons that we come to learn. If we could get out of that, and we didn't come to fix nothing, we came to learn the greater lessons of creation itself. Creation don't do nothing but create. So what is your role? And maybe that don't make sense. I don't know. But
No, it makes a lot of sense. And I'm sure those people listening and watching are just, raising the questions that you're raising is going to weave inside of them. But also I can feel the smiles and the hearts expanding. And I'm not just saying.
I think that we have to give permission to ask that deeper question.
Yes. And that
Give
deepest
ourselves
question is hard and easy. And really, I hear all those questions as you remembering we are spirit in human form, not humans in spirit form. And so these questions are so relevant that we can be asking ourselves and each other and asking the children, not to put something in them, but just offering it. Like I experienced growing up, like you experienced growing up, like, okay, wait, well, I'm going to do with that one. But then later you find out even the tough stuff is very valuable to bring compassion, to bring curiosity. I think there's so much we put into a limited perspective, not perspective, but limited experiences. And not that they are important because we're learning, but also to be able to open up to other perspectives. It's really wonderful. I see you, I feel you doing that wherever we go, is that the opening. Even when you're really so strong about what you know, it's never in a punitive way. Like I'm probably telling off stories about elders, some parts of, kind of rough, but we're all different. But yours is not that. It's just, but mostly it's opening, expanding, asking questions, asking to remember, not become, remember your spirit. Remember. Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing for us as the modern day species, that we have convinced ourselves that we came, I don't know what we convinced ourselves to do, because to me, it's so scary when I observe that people are afraid to go into nature. That brings me to sadness. I live here on an island in St. Croix, and some of my children that I worked with early on in this island had never gone into nature. That to me makes me sad. That hurts my heart.
Yeah.
You have not been, you live here, you grew up here, but you've never been in the rainforest. Then I bring a group of children into the rainforest and they're afraid to put their feet on the ground. That hurts me, Anita. That caused me pain. That a child has not connected to the mother that nurtures it. That a human being doesn't know that this earth doesn't do anything but nurture it. To me, that hurts me.
Yeah.
That caused me grief.
And it's good to name that. And then you keep creating the experiences that allow that connection, like yesterday to that water. I can feel that. I could just, I know we both need rest, but I could keep talking to you for days. And, but we are coming to the end of our time. So could you tell people how you want them, if they want to get a hold of you? I saw that there's a thing called St. Croix Council of Elders at gmail.com, but I didn't know if that's where you wanted people to find you.
Now they can find me directly through my email, the address.
Okay.
One that they can do is Abubakr Tahirah at Gmail at 8tahirah8@gmail.com.
Yeah.
You have that one?
Yes, I do. And we'll put it in the writing, but let me say it too, because sometimes people don't go back to the site.
And also utilize my phone number. Those are probably the best way, because if they come to House of Elders, if they see it online, they could leave a message there. But usually we don't have an administrative person that's keeping track of that right now.
I get it. So let me just say Iya's email, and it's ABUBAKRTAHIRAH8, the number 8, at gmail.com. And we will have it written. So, but I just want those of you who are really good at remembering that, you'll have it. Others will have to go see it. It'll be on the website, so they'll be able to find you. Thank you so much, Iya. This has been a just wonderful conversation with you, and I thank all of the viewers and listeners who are here. I encourage you, and I just feel her energy that you'll want to learn more about Iya and get in touch with her. And I thank you for being here. I don't know if you had one last thing to say, or you look beautiful. Let me just say that light coming out.
Well, if you think I look beautiful, I am going to take it with good grace this morning, because I was feeling a bit fragile, fragmented when we got on. So thank you so much for having me, and also allowing our voices to come together, and also mirroring our sisterhood and what we bring into the world. We are mirroring it through this conversation.
Yes.
Anita, you being from a different ancestral line, I'm being from another ancestral line, but we are connected. And it wouldn't surprise me with Anita being, because my great grandfather, which I didn't say, one Alan told us that he was Toltec. My auntie told me that he always said that you guys need to understand, I came out of Mexico. He said, I was not come out of Africa enslaved. I was a Toltec. And he come out of that. He said, he kept trying to tell them, right? And so here I am, this little child that's different from all the rest of the people. And I feel that the ancestors is really what my medicine is, through the initiation in Daga people's work, and also in Ifa, the carry of the primordial memory of mother.
Yes.
The Yemaya is primordial energy, and then there's one that we don't name her in the Daga people, primordial mother, who is able to raise us up from when we've fallen. Her words will raise us up from falling. And so I try to live according to my initiation and my medicine that is identified for me. And I would encourage people to look at what medicine they bring and be able to look at what calls them the most and step into that. Because we may be chasing something that's not even speaking to our soul. As what I hold speaks to my soul, am I bringing forth my greatest offering to this earth? Thank you so much for listening.
Oh, that's a good place to end. Thank you so much. And just remember, all of you, to come back. You'll hear more elders, beautiful messages. And you can go find us at Four Sacred Gifts on your favorite podcast app and on the Be Here Now network. Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank you, Anita.